Hi, good afternoon. Thanks everybody for coming. Here with the incredible Elyse today from Agility Lab Consulting. And we're going to talk about nonprofit donor acquisition and how it's really changing up. Just the landscape is really rapidly changing. I don't totally understand all of the different pieces at play, but luckily we've got Elyse here, and I'm going to let her introduce herself quickly. Elyse, tell us a little bit about what you do at Agility Lab.
Sure. Thanks, Tasha. I'm Elyse Wallnutt. Hi, everybody. I recently founded Agility Lab Consulting. I've spent my entire career working in nonprofit, both in-house and on the consulting side. And I'm very interested in understanding and helping organizations understand how audience demand for privacy is really changing things, both from the legislative response with now 22 states considering privacy legislation, but also the ways that big tech is making changes that will impact your acquisition strategy as you're trying to reach your audiences. So I've been working with Tasha on talking through this, and I'm excited to talk through it with you all.
No, this is incredible. And our team is really excited. Obviously, we support nonprofits with a variety of ad work. And so, sorry, kind of skipped over this, but I'm Tasha and I'm with the Yeeboo digital team, and we're really supporting nonprofits as they move forward to lead with digital. And that's across communications, that's across operations, and obviously a large social media component, fundraising component as well. So that was our initial connection with Elyse, because she's a nonprofit marketing expert. And so this is really fun, such a timely topic, because I really feel like 2023, we're only going to see an increase in this entire discussion, right, surrounding privacy laws. So this is great. So we're going to jump right into it. At any time, comments, questions, please throw them in. Elyse has graciously said, yeah, she'll answer things on the fly. So I'm really excited about that. So we're going to kick it off here. How have social ads been changing in the nonprofit space in particular? And I think, that could really relate to kind of ad metrics and everything. But what are those changes you've seen in your time in nonprofit marketing, and particularly recently?
Yeah. So I should mention, I have worked for a number of different organizations, the Nature Conservancy, Amnesty International, and then most recently World Food Program. So I've worked in advertising from a variety of spectrums, both the top of the funnel ads that introduce people to your mission, whether that's display advertising, one-to-one advertising, and then more of the bottom of the funnel ads. So social media and paid search, where people are already kind of brand aware or closely resemble your audience and can be convinced to be donors or prospects pretty easily. So the thing that has come up for me in the last year that people ask me about a lot is, why is Facebook dead as an acquisition channel? And I think what's tricky about that is Facebook is really just first to see the hit of audience demand for privacy. So what happened was Apple and Firefox, about, I guess it's a year and a half now, since we're in 23, but they made some changes. Firefox started eliminating what's called third-party cookies. And it's a little piece of code that helps marketers follow you around on the internet. So those shoe ads that follow you around, no matter where you are.
It's the shoe ads, yeah.
Yes.
Yoga pants for me, but yes, shoe ads for other people. Yep.
Yeah, for better or for worse. That third-party cookies are what allow that. So Firefox stopped allowing those, as did a couple of other internet browsers. And Apple also made a change with their iOS update in, I believe it was June 2021, where they forced mobile app developers to ask audiences for their permission to track them. So you would get a little alert on your phone if you had an iPhone, granting permission or not. And 94% of people said no, which makes sense. If you're asked, can somebody follow me around on my phone traffic, you're probably going to say no. So Facebook's reach was so dependent on mobile traffic that they really got hit hard. So they are not able to target people with their advertising in the same ways that they used to. So from the advertiser's perspective, when you used to upload a list of email names and Facebook would build a great lookalike model for you so that you could go find people who resembled your audience. Yeah. Facebook didn't have as much algorithmic learning to rely upon because of that shift. So Facebook took a $10 billion loss. We saw it was last week on the 4th that they got hit with a fine from the EU in relation to how they have been opting audiences in illegally, as the EU found, by telling people that they had to essentially either allow their data to be used in personalized advertising or not use Facebook at all. So they got hit with, I think it was a $414 million fine in that privacy violation. So the big thing to understand here is that Facebook is just representing the face of everything that's going to be happening. And other players like Google are going to have to get on board because they're going to want to protect their own brand. They have said that they are going to eliminate third-party cookies from Chrome sometime in 2024. That timeline keeps changing. But really what we're getting down to is that audience targeting capabilities are going to be a lot more difficult for marketers. So we need to think more creatively about how we're going to reach people.
Absolutely, for sure. And it's so interesting, right? And I just, given my age, Facebook was a really big deal when I went into university. It was kind of, right around that time frame. And so in some ways, Facebook is one of the first places I remember like clicking on an ad and then actually buying said items. So I'm sure for many nonprofits, Facebook has been a huge source of brand awareness and reach for years. Mm-hmm. So this is really, really changing up the landscape. Okay, that's excellent. So much valuable background information there that I had no idea. So I love that. So to speak to it, and this is kind of from a North American context for sure, although I mean, you used a great EU example there of how this is quite global. But how are privacy laws going to change marketing? And you touched on it a little bit, but, I imagine this is only going to expand over time, like you talked about with Google.
Yeah. In my opinion, it's really about you as a consumer can probably answer this question. We have become so much more aware of how our data is being used. There was that documentary on Netflix. It was called the social network, whatever that was. That was the really exposed how data is being used by social networks to build reach. And I think as audiences get more protective about that and say, no, you can't track me, that's what legislators are responding to. They're responding to constituent demand. So I think agnostic of where you are in the world, that is happening throughout. So I think the EU was first in 2016 with implementing GDPR. And that's why we all had to fix our privacy policies, the day before it went into place, if we were, here in North America and happened to target EU consumers. But I think what's important for US and Canadian audiences to understand is that this is really growing here. So we need to be able to say that we are going to respect compliance in 5 states. So California, Utah, Colorado, Virginia, I'm testing myself, and Connecticut. Those are the 5. They are implementing privacy laws this year that go into place, and that will give consumers the ability to tell you to stop using their data and to delete them completely. So as we operationalize this on the nonprofit side, my advice is to treat this like it's going to be everywhere and to start getting ahead of it and making it easier for yourself by getting a set of operational practices that make sense. How are you going to respond when somebody comes to you and says, you need to delete everything you have on me from your file? It shouldn't take somebody in-house 3 weeks to fulfill that request. Yeah. You need to be able to do that and scale it. You also need to be able to communicate in places like your privacy policy, how audiences should expect you to treat those requests. And moreover, there's a lot of optimization that you can do with getting ahead of letting people know that you respect how their data is used. So those cookie banner opt-ins, right now they're optional outside of those 5 states in the US that have implemented it. And in Canada, I think they're completely optional right now, but you can get ahead of doing that right this second, actually. And there are ways that you can optimize it so that it doesn't hurt your Google Analytics data and more people opt in. So that's where we are right now. I think, like I said, as Google gets on board with protecting their own brand, this is going to change a lot. It's important to know that even your Google Analytics data is considered third party. So the name of the game right now is really making sure that you own your data as much as possible. So where I think as nonprofit marketers, we put things like lead generation on kind of the back burner sometimes because it doesn't break even immediately, that's going to be really what needs to be your focus, is collecting email addresses, making sure that you're mobilizing your staff to do that, making sure that everybody is on board with understanding the value of first-party data acquisition.
So you believe then, and maybe you have some examples from if the EU is just that much further ahead of us on this, you really see those lead gen tools, which, I mean, business to business has always been the case, right? Really big on lead generation tools, really big on how to acquire email addresses. You see that increasing rapidly, or it should be a priority in the nonprofit world now?
Yeah, I think what's really important to think about is how you can free yourself from being so beholden to third parties. So this is going to get worse before it gets better in terms of things that get cut with audience reach. So the more that you have that data autonomy and can reach out to people with their consented approval, the better off you are. So first party data acquisition looks like either the collection of information that people have given to you through a form. So when they're signing a petition on your site, or they went to one of your events, they volunteered, etc., or if they're browsing your site in a logged in state. So for nonprofits, we don't have a lot of reason for somebody to log into our sites, but that's potentially something that we could start thinking about, is product development. Is there a reason that you want people to log in that would help you to secure that data? So I think really we're going to have to go back and think creatively as marketers, whereas in previous years, the past decade plus, we've had the benefit of algorithmic learning and these trackers that can help to spread our message pretty much, organically, as far as we put money behind it and it goes. And that's not going to be the case anymore.
It really feels like a clear evolution point, right? Like, here's the past. This is almost like a before after split, because a lot of things you did before are just not going to be an option anymore. So what does your after look like? And I mean, I just started thinking when you were talking about websites and logins, I mean, most nonprofits don't have a website built to have a login of some sort, right? Like, that's just not how they've been designed. So that's super interesting. The implications are huge, obviously, to consider something like that. But at the same time, the value of being able to see those interactions and owning those interactions is going to be pretty critical. Okay, I love this. So such fascinating information. I'm glad we didn't go into like crazy depth, you and I, before this, because I actually am enjoying the like mind blown part of this. This is great. So good. Okay, so it looks like there was some internet issues, but everybody's okay, I think, now. I'm just checking the comments. So, yeah, I think we're okay. I think she's okay now. So this is the good one. What do these changes mean in the short term for donor acquisition, which I know you've kind of touched on a few points here already, but far reaching?
Yeah. So one of the big things I'm helping nonprofits with this year is I built, it's called a 4-step data autonomy framework. So there are basically 4 pieces you need to be thinking about when it comes to donor acquisition. And the first is compliance. So the basics we talked about in terms of operational planning, privacy policy, your cookie opt-in banners, etc. There's integration. So you're going to need to be thinking about how you will have data at your disposal when third-party cookies aren't available. So you want to be thinking about your tech stack. So if Facebook offers a conversion API, that's something you might want to be looking at. Google has come up with a few different options that may or may not happen. They've had topics. They had the thing called Fledge. They're kind of fledging themselves with what exactly they're going to do to protect their bottom line with this. But there are going to be pieces integration wise that you're going to need to build so that you have access to your data, again, autonomously. You are going to need to be thinking about strategically where you want to be in terms of building audience trust. So that really looks like being forward thinking of saying, hey, are we going to hedge our bets and wait, or are we going to get ahead of this and implement these things up front so that we can show people that we care about how their data is being used? So that, I think, has a lot of brand components. And the last is really the strategic building out of your first party data acquisition strategy and where you're going to center yourself on that. So I think nonprofits, we tend to think of lead generation as we're going to build some petitions and see how that goes. But really, we need to be thinking about what intricate data do we want to know about our audience base and how are we going to scale that, and also make sure that we have a business reason for retaining it, because your legal team is going to tell you that data minimization is the name of the game here, because that reduces your risk. So really just getting yourself aligned is what needs to happen right now. And I think those 4 steps are what I've found as the solution that I really wanted when I was working in-house to help you think about what's coming next, because donor acquisition is really going to be more expensive, not just because of the economy. Obviously, this is going to be a big factor of it. And with that, you're going to need to project revenue differently, especially for mature programs that haven't already saturated their reach.
Yeah. Wow. It's gonna, yeah, I was gonna say, no, it's fantastic, right? And like those, you gave some really actionable pieces which is excellent, because I think sometimes just knowing where to start is gonna be the tough part. And
exactly,
I don't know that there's gonna be there's probably not a one size fits all answer here. There's probably gonna have to be a lot of team discussion on how best to, look at this, what's possible. Mm-hmm. But I can see this being a huge challenge for, in many ways, very mature, large scale nonprofits, even though you maybe have a larger team to handle these changes. In theory, you have a large team to handle the changes. At the same time, for a nonprofit that has been using Facebook for a very long time, that seems like that would be a huge challenge to change up your entire donor acquisition strategy, especially if you've been sinking a lot of money into Facebook or Instagram or whatever, your social media groups were.
Yeah. I mean, I think the good news about this for now is that we have some time before Google implements these changes. So when you're thinking about things like your attribution model, if you're not on a last touch attribution model, meaning you're not, counting just donations that happen on pages, you might be thinking about what the first touch that introduced a person was to your program. That might get the credit in your funnel. If you're outside of the realm of that last click, you need to be thinking about how that's going to shift when Google moves away from giving you access to all of that data. And you need to be collecting it for now. So whether you have that, more progressed attribution model or not, your first bet should be auditing your programs right now and collecting the insights that you have so that you can get some good contextual understanding of what's working and what's not and why, so that you might say, hey, we tried display ads on this site and they worked well, but not on this site. So why might that be? You might think about your content tagging strategy differently so that you can get a sense of semantics for why something rises to the top in terms of your organic traffic, for example. So you're not just tagging based on topic. Maybe you tag based on emotion evoked or, you know, the author, things like that, so that you can start to get those insights that are going to arm you as a creative marketer to make more creative decisions. But I think the big thing to know is that your revenue is going to be looking different in the next few years, and we can't just move forward with these projected 10% year over year increases all the time and think that that's going to sustain. We're going to have to think differently.
Really, yeah, that's really good. And, you know, I mean, this ties in, we've talked in the past, our team kind of has discussed GA4. And if you're not already running GA4, start that immediately so that you have, you know, those comparable data sets and those pieces, which I know, you know, nonprofits, there's always a struggle to kind of, I think, be an early adopter of most things just because it's challenging. You know, it's always, you hate to compare yourself to the commercial world because it's not the same. The teams are not the same. The resources are not the same and everything. But I think this will likely impact nonprofits potentially on a larger scale than it's going to a commercial business as well, right? Because so much relies on fundraising efforts, and even your donor stewardship may change based on some of these practices as well. So it's super interesting. All right. So you've given some great suggestions already, and I'm going to follow up with everybody with a sheet that you've given me so that we can kind of go, here are some great next steps. But I'm just putting down the words recommended next steps with the idea of like, what are the adaptations you would suggest, fairly quickly for nonprofits to consider or to really look at in 2023, I guess.
Yeah. I wrote myself some notes here too.
Perfect. No, it's good. I love it.
The first thing I think is breaking down silos between your teams. So no matter what size nonprofit you have, privacy is not just for the legal team to deal with. The marketing team needs to be involved to make sure legal knows, one, what they're pushing out, because the privacy policy needs to really adequately cover everything that you're doing with user data and set expectations and also be legally compliant. So you need to talk to your legal team. You need to be involved. You need to make sure you're not iced out of that conversation. And you also need to be thinking about ways that you're being practical, like I said earlier, about what data fields you need to keep on file, presumably for whatever retention period you set, whether that's 5 years, 10 years, whatever it might be. You'll want to make sure that legal understands the business reason for those outcomes. So making sure that everybody has a seat at the table is really important there. The next thing I wrote down was, I think evangelizing the importance of first-party data is going to be really important. And this is where I think large nonprofits can learn from small nonprofits in terms of, yes, smaller nonprofits might be more reliant on things like Facebook than larger nonprofits who have budgets that can test and learn and display channels. But they also probably know who their community of supporters is. They know who their local sponsors are. They know who their local influencers, if you will, are. And they know who their community leaders are that can help them get the word out organically. And I would start thinking about your donor base and your corporate sponsors in that way so that they can help you with your lead generation outputs in that sense. And I think this is also part of the puzzle where tech stack is really important. You don't want to have all those rogue microsites that nobody looks at anymore that are probably collecting leads. You want to make sure that your event organizers and your volunteer staff, everybody needs to put leads into the same system, and everybody needs to be on the same pipeline. You want to make sure that those processes are really clean there. The next thing I put down was just stop or start operating like you don't have the benefit of third-party algorithms right now. So really taking a look at your attribution model and saying, if I only had a last touch model to draw from right now, how would I be making decisions differently? And really right-sizing those pieces so that you can operate like you would a year from now if those weren't available to you. So those are the big things.
I always love that. It's actually, there was someone on LinkedIn. Oh, Catherine McDonald, who's great, works in, fundraising and philanthropy. And she had just posted today or yesterday about, she had this great connection between the ABBA Money, Money, Money song and the idea of fundraising and, but with the concept that it would be great if you had a big name, philanthropist give you $10 million. That would be awesome. Everybody wants that. But you can't operate like that's the plan, right? You have to operate like everything's going to go this way. And maybe, extensions happen. Who knows? Google says 2024, maybe something comes out. Like, I think that's, that's always the way, right? They're going to kind of make us all freak out about potential changes. But I don't think we can rely on, these changes not happening. They're coming. Yes. You can be more prepared or not. Right. So, well, I love all of those recommended steps. It's so great. I don't know if anybody wants to jump in on any comments. Like, your insights are so valuable. So fantastic. I'm even going back to my own, like, B2B marketing and going, oh my goodness, I have to rethink so many things. This is fantastic. Just these insights, I think, especially for nonprofits who need often that expert guidance, it's probably not going to exist in-house. You probably don't have someone in-house with your level of expertise to kind of walk through these things. So I guess that brings me, if there's no questions, I want to just jump in. How can people discover more about what you do and what your supports are? And, and I can obviously drop in the link to your website and everything, but tell us more about how you're helping nonprofits.
Yeah. So like I mentioned, the big thing I'm helping nonprofits with is hosting those one-day workshops to walk you through the 4 steps that need to come together for you and customize it so that it fits your model and also who's on staff. So the idea is that you walk away from that session with a project plan that's customized for you, and you get that insight into exactly what you said earlier, Tasha, the prioritization grid of all of this. Do I need to stand up an API first, or do I need to update my privacy? What do I need to be doing and when? So that workshop is really meant to provide that insight for you. So my website is agilitylab.io, which is
nice, fancy,
new and shiny.
Yeah, very new and shiny, fancy. I like it.
You can sign up for my email list there. I also have a couple of tools for you. I have a risk preparedness checklist so that you can think about some of the different things that we've talked about here. It's basically helping you to understand the ways that marketing and privacy are very interlinked, which I don't think is immediately obvious until you start digging into it.
That's so great. I love it. And I'm already on your email list. They come into my inbox. I'm always looking at them thinking, this is so fantastic. So thank you from the Yeeboo Digital team for joining us. Thank you, anybody who jumped in on this. I feel like it's so helpful. We'll be following up with that sheet with some suggestions from Elyse. And cheers. Happy Wednesday, everybody. And thanks again, Elyse.
Thank you. Happy New Year.
Yeah. Bye, all.